So, after coming from one really big public company, we have the really huge opportunity to become to welcome a second executive from a stock-listed, our former executive from a very well-known company, which is from Zynga, which like a lot of you probably play the games from. Please let me welcome Marcus Segal from former executive and COO and Camels. So he'll share what mistakes you can make as an entrepreneur and hopefully also give you a few lessons on how to avoid them. So, Marcus, the stage is all yours. Thank you very much.
Can you guys hear me? All right. Hey, what's going on? Why am I looking at me and don't they get to see my... Oh, there we go. I am so excited to be in Pennsylvania. I got the invite. Hey, do you want to come check out Pennsylvania? And the name alone, I became the envy of all my friends. Then I did a little research on Dracula, and I looked up Vlad, and I mean, you draw a big mustache in, and maybe if Vlad had eaten where I went to dinner last night to have an authentic Romanian giant platter of meat, and I think you got something there. I just don't know what Vlad maybe he's the tech connector, Vlad the tech connector. He's got the Google Glass. I'm really excited to be here with all of you today. I left Zynga at the end of February. It was an amazing journey, 6.5 years. I started off building things like human resources and IT and stats and back-end data operations. And then I caught the game bug and I moved over to the game side and I became the COO of game studios during the Mafia Wars, Farmville, Cityville years. Then I decided I should try my hand on making games from scratch, and I built games in HTML5, which everyone thought was going to be a big deal, and I don't know, maybe someday for HTML5, probably not. And so now, though, I am traveling around the world, and how many of you guys have traveled on your own in your lives? Okay, so you guys will be with me on this. So when you travel by yourself, you have these nights where you're in someplace amazing, like you're in Barcelona, and it's Tuesday, and you don't know anybody, and you're eating like little tapas, and you're looking at Facebook, and you're liking people's pictures of their kids and stuff, and you're like, wait a minute, why the hell am I on Facebook right now? I'm the one who's having an interesting life, but I'm sitting here alone and I'm bored. So I decided that this time, when I take a break between companies, that I would travel around the world and I would meet with the entrepreneurs and artists who are changing it. And that this would be the way that I would hopefully give back to entrepreneurship, which has given me so much, and also not have so many boring Tuesday nights where I don't know anybody in Barcelona. So, if anyone wants to find any trouble to get into tonight, find me, because I want to see what Cluj is about. Today's presentation is going to be, I'm going to try and have a little bit of everything for whether you're sort of just getting started or you're at a startup and you're growing. I'm going to try, or if you're a CEO of a publicly traded company, I got something for you, HP, it'll be in here. But before we get started, let me just give you the last 20 years of my life in 2 minutes. I graduated from UC Santa Barbara with a degree in English literature and a passion for history. I got out of school and started making documentaries for the History Channel and A&E. And in the summers, I blew up cars in movies. Probably my greatest achievement in television and film is Beastmaster 3, The Eye of Praxis. I don't know how the Academy ignored it. Surely some film professor someday will give Mark Singer the accolades he deserves. In 1999, I decided that I would get out of TV and film. Well, before then, I knew I wanted to get out. I wanted to be part of what was happening next, rather than making TV shows about great achievements and events in history. And I started to get my MBA at night, and then the dot-com boom happened, and then suddenly there was a great shortage of people who had experience running companies. They called them gray hairs. Back then I had much more hair than I do now, and not much of it was gray, but I had experience running a television production company. And so I was able to get a job working for a company called EMusic.com. EMusic, this is in 1999, so MP3 players were like the size of my shoe, and they held 100 songs. There wasn't a lot of music out there, but I had this feeling that this was going to be this amazingly disruptive thing. And it was, sort of. So, you know, we made all the kind of mistakes that Web 1.0 companies make. We went public, we were like 26 bucks a share and massively unprofitable, and we took our money from our IPO and we went on a massive buying spree. You're holding that clock at me, I'm going over. I'll tell you right now. You could just put it down, I'm gonna. Okay, so we went on a massive buying spree. We acquired all these companies and everything. Meanwhile, no one knew what an MP3 player, what an MP3 was. So we would sell people music and we were licensing it legitimately. And then we get these customer service emails, where's my music? They'd say, where's my CD? We'd say, no, you didn't buy a CD. You bought a song and it's in your computer. No, it's not. Yes, it is, and it's in a folder called My Music. I never made a folder called My Music. Your computer came with a folder called My Music. No, it didn't, and screw you for putting a folder on my computer. And then Napster happened, and then everyone knew what an MP3 was, but they believed that they should be free. I mean, literally, it was like we were selling lemonade and they were giving away beer. Our stock went from $25 a share down to 53 cents before we got acquired by Universal. And Universal said that we were going to be where music went to die, like they were going to give us all the back catalog stuff that wasn't in the stores anymore, and then they decided not to do that, and eventually the whole thing kind of got broken up. EMusic still exists though. Go EMusic. Then I did a business-to-business startup in Vendicia with some of the early guys at EMusic. It was in fintech. The most boring 5 years of my life, but they are still going strong, and they do back-end billing infrastructure for Intuit, Yahoo, World of Warcraft, a bunch of companies like that. And then I joined Zynga, which you guys heard a little bit about already. So today we're going to cover a few things in 13 minutes and 48 seconds. First of all, for those of you who have a startup idea, the question I always have is, people get, hey Marcus, how do I know that this is a great idea? And I'll tell you, you can start off with this. Am I changing the world? Am I disrupting an existing business? Am I doing it better, faster, cheaper? Am I going to return my investors 5x, 10x in 5 years? You can go like, yes, yes, yes. Those are all great, but at the end of the day, none of that is going to be what makes or breaks you. The truth is that 90% or more of startups are going to fail. Right? So the only test of whether your idea is a great idea worth going after is whether you have to do it. Whether you can ignore stats like this, that the average VC firm funds 6 out of 1,000 pitches, that approximately 60% of funded startups don't make it, and that 30% get acquired by other companies, acqui-hired, or don't have a huge exit, and that less than 10% ever go public or have a big exit. If you can look at all that and say, you know what, I'd still rather go after this idea than sit under fluorescent lights working at State Farm Insurance or some such thing, then go after your idea. Because this is your life, this is your time. And so I say, get on the roller coaster. And maybe your idea will change into something else, or maybe your first one will fail, your third one will make it. I mean, I've worked on 3 startups, right? I've worked on 3, and I've seen another, 10 of them up close as a board advisor or through friends, connections and everything. And I can tell you that at the end of the day, it's a lifestyle. Like, I'm going to be part of making new. I'm going to be part of bringing new things in the world. And you're going to take some knocks sometimes. You're going to have to persevere. I mean, listen to HP's story, but you just keep on going. And for those of you who get on it, I'd say get on the ride. Like, do it. Or at least move to a company where you're passionate about the product. Right? Like, if you work in accounting and you love games, work for a game company. Like, you'll love working in accounting in a game company more than you like working at accounting in an auto parts store. Just my advice. People always ask me, should I raise money from friends and family? Oh, hell yes, you should. Because first of all, these people love you, so they'll be very patient during your proposal. Also, you'll have skin in the game. I've raised money through friends and family, and for my company, Vendicia. And when I raised money for that, I had to go to Uncle Bob. And Uncle Bob, his pants are like up to here. He's kind of, I don't know what's happened, if he shrunk and won't buy new pants or what. But I had to ask him if he wanted to put in money. And he didn't really understand what we were trying to do. But it didn't matter. He wanted to be with me on the roller coaster. Right? And I explained the risks. I said, look, most of the time these things don't work out. That's just so you know. You want to invest? You know, and at the end of the day, look, for many of us, the stock market's treated us the way a baby treats a diaper anyway, so why not just sort of diversify a little bit and have some fun? Another thing people ask me are, what about angel networks? Yes, absolutely, go to angel networks. It's never been easier to find funding than now. I mean, use Kickstarter and Crowdfunder, and there are these angel networks. If you're going to use an angel network, the good thing is that you're now part of a community. Like, see this room right here, the person to your left or your right? You know, the person to your right, she's probably going to connect you with that lawyer that you need to make sure that you get the right deal at your angel network. If you don't know how to do funding, or if you want to do a background check on these angels, right? Talk to the people in this room. Reach out to Vlad, the tech connector. There he is. Because these are your people now. This is your community. And you should use each other. And you should stand on each other's shoulders. And you should lock arms and work together. Because if one of you succeeds, all of you succeeds. What I can tell you from the Silicon Valley experience is you hear about one company making it and you just get inspired right when you need it. Right? Like I got goosebumps when I was hearing about HP's story. Right? Like Google announcing that they're going to give away basically your product for free right before your IPO. Oh my God. Like, but it didn't matter because he persevered. And that's what you get by being part of the community. You know? The other thing I get is, why won't the VC call me back? Here's what you need to know about VCs. Desperation is an ugly cologne. The truth is that he or she just might not be that into you. Also, VCs no one likes to go first. VCs like to follow on. So sometimes someone may have turned you down, but if you get some interest from somebody else and you get someone to sign, then you call them back and say, hey, listen, I know you passed on us before. I'm hoping you'll give us a second look because I've added on this advisor, or I've got this funder now. Don't give up. Also, feel free to, if a VC passes on you, say, hey, that's great. I understand, and I hope you won't fault me for the fact that I'm probably going to come back to you again after I make some revisions. Is there anyone in your network that you can connect me to that you think would be of help to me? Just ask, right? No big deal. Also, I'd say it's worth the wait for the right VC, right? So do this background check. Ask your friends. Look up any information you can have on this VC firm and on the individual who is investing in you, and find out what you can. Next, I want to talk about hiring great people. So this is tricky. In the beginning, you mentioned, I think about half of you guys are doing startups. In the beginning, you're really hiring a lot of Swiss Army knives. You're hiring people with a lot of skills. They might not be great at any one thing, but they're pretty good at a few things. Try and do that in the beginning, but understand who you're hiring. So if you know somebody is not really the CTO that you're going to be needing in 6 months from now, then just make them a VP of engineering. Don't make them the CTO and then create a problem later where you can't hire the CTO when you need one. Title inflation is something that destroys many startups. It's really hard to tell your co-founder and best friend since high school, you know, I know that you're the senior vice president of business development, but I really think we need to bring someone in who's actually done it before. And they're not going to work for you because you're going to seem like a clown. So let's agree that this is about us growing this company and making money. So if you avoid title inflation from the outset, you can kind of save that. The truth is that a lot of you will start companies and maybe you'll be so successful that you'll hopefully be smart enough to say, you know, maybe I'm not the right person to be the CEO right now. Maybe I need to take a different role and bring somebody else in. Be realistic. Like, understand yourself and just sort of know where you are. And also I'd say is, I'm going to say this word a lot, be realistic. Be realistic. I'm not saying don't be optimistic. What I mean is, if your entire plan hinges on hiring 3 principal level engineers this quarter, you're not being realistic. You're basically saying, I'd like to find, in order for my plan to succeed, I'm going to need to find 3 pegacorns. A pegacorn is a Pegasus, which is a horse with wings that also has a horn. Much more rare than either a Pegasus or a unicorn. So sometimes you have to decide, you know what, I'm going to have to get by with some fast horses that don't have wings or horns in their heads. Like, make a good plan, make a realistic plan. So, in terms of how many of you manage people? None of you? Okay, 4 of you. I'm going to go fast on this part because I'm over time. So basically, management as a science has only existed for about 130, 140 years. The first guy who invented motivation theory is a guy named Frederick Taylor. He defined management as a collaboration of people and machines to create value. He believed that fundamentally human beings are inefficient machines. And as managers, he believed that my job as a manager would be to find the one right way for the human machine to build the thing and make sure that the human machines do it that way. Sounds like a great guy to work for, right? But what he did have that was really good stuff was he basically believed that the best way to get a project done would be to break it down into the smallest pieces you can before deciding how to go after a project. Which, how many of you have used Scrum or Agile development? For those of you, yeah, right, everyone. So that is a Taylor-born idea. I'm going to skip through this because we don't have time. Later on, well actually no, let's go back 1 second because I'm already ignoring the clock. So, how many of you have heard of the Hawthorne effect? Not that many. So basically, Western Electric, which later became GE, had this idea. If we can prove that having brighter lights in the factory makes people more productive, we'll sell a lot of light bulbs. Right? Makes sense. Here's the thing though. What they found is that they could change the lights, and it didn't really affect productivity very much. But what did affect productivity, whether they changed the lights or not, would be if a scientist in a white coat walked into the room at the beginning of the day and said, "Hello everybody, today we've adjusted the lights to make it nicer for you." And then productivity would soar for a time before progressing to the mean. This was important because this meant that managers were part of a human system, that human beings are, maybe we are inefficient machines, but we're inefficient machines that are sort of predictable. A researcher named Mary Parker Follett, who's really one of the greats in management science, she took this data and she sort of came up with a whole new theory around how to manage people, which is really what we're all living today and what guys like Tony Hsieh do at Zappos, is you bring the employees into the conversation. They're motivated not by, look, make 12 donuts in an hour or you're fired. Forget that. Like you get people fired up. You give them some ownership of their work. Maybe you give them some stock options. You buy them into the mission. You build a narrative around what it is you're doing and why, right? And when you do that, you get employees who stay longer, who retain longer, who recruit their friends in, and you build a success factory. So, in terms of retaining top talent, how many of you guys have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Wow, a lot. So, Maslow's this amazing psychologist, and he was different. He didn't study sort of people who were having problems or people who were broken in some way. He focused on people who were highly successful. And he came up with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and there are B needs and D needs, and it's very interesting, but hard to use as a manager. A guy named Chip Conley, who's there on the right, he ran a chain of hotels. Now he's working at Airbnb. He took Maslow's hierarchy of needs and he created a simpler version. It's got 3 tiers. On the bottom is money, survival, which means basically if you want to make sure your employees are covered. Right? You can't have your employees on the brink of starvation, even if you're giving them shares, because what ends up happening is if they're worried about survival all the time, they're not going to be thinking about work or growing. You want to hear about it? And HP is going to run an organization where, yeah, athletes know they can send me an email, and athletes know I'll read it, right? And then what they'll do is they'll tell you what that great idea is, and maybe that idea isn't right, but they're going to, as a leader, you're going to put them on something transformative. You're going to make sure that they're on the most important project. You're going to make sure that they replace themselves, they train their replacement, so that they can move on to the next thing, right? That's how you get to hire and retain great talent. You create recognition systems, and you provide a way for employees to transform themselves and always to re-energize and reinvigorate themselves with new work. Let's go. Overall, in terms of having a culture of excellence, set clear goals and priorities, staff to succeed. Don't start a new team without having someone who succeeded before on it, someone who knows what it looks like when things are working and when things are not working. Have accountability. If you set goals, make sure that they're measurable goals. Have rewards for those who perform. And be careful. If you have short-term projects and you have long-term projects, companies always get this wrong. They incentivize people to work on short-term projects. But it's the long-term projects that are going to move your company forward. You know, like Google's self-driving car is you know, probably 5-6 years of work. Are you giving me 10 more minutes? I love that. So Google's, you know, that's years of work, right? No one would want to work on that if Google didn't incentivize people to work on long-term projects. Like, that's going to be a transformative idea in 10 or 15 years, right? But they've got to have the best minds wanting to work on it now. You have to avoid this, and this is where companies, especially in software, get it wrong, is they incentivize people on short-term gains, and then all the best people are focused on incremental technology and not working on big-time projects. So you have to find the right compensation mix. Celebrate successes, learn from failures. If you're going to launch products that fail, and it can be really crushing, like I've worked on, we had this in video games a lot, you work on a video game for like, you know, a year, and you, especially the last 3 months, you kill yourself to get this game out, and then you launch it. And then for some reason people don't want to play it. And sometimes it just is that way. And we at Zynga had a real tough time with this. People would want to fight and give me just another month with this game and we can turn it around and all this other stuff. And sometimes you can't. So what you need to do is have a respectful process where you get everyone together and you basically give everyone a verbal hug or a real hug and say, guys, you know what, we didn't get them this time, but we learned a hell of a lot. And we're going to take this piece and this piece and this piece and we're going to use it in another game. And this experience you guys have had, this will not be wasted. And then, you know what, make a boat out of paper and light it on fire and let it go in San Francisco Bay. And drink some beers. It'll be okay. Just don't punish people for failing. Don't punish people for failing, or they'll be afraid to take risks. And again, live in the real world. Always do postmortems of projects that didn't work out. It's okay. Like, failures are going to happen. You know, we don't hear about the failures of a lot of companies because now it's like look, I mean, if I could say that all the games that Zynga put out that never left the Philippines, right? We geo-tested, we geo-locked it in the Philippines, and the Filipino people didn't take to it, and that was all we needed to know. Like, and I've worked on those games in HTML5. In terms of some resources, Getting to Plan B by Randy Commissar, Do More Faster by Brad Feld, Peak by Chip Conley. You know what, I'm just going to give these slides to Vlad, and hopefully he'll email them out. Vlad, the tech connector. I'm going to leave you guys with a little story. So, you know, basically I work on startups, so every 4 or 5 years, everything I work on crashes into the rocks or gets bought and goes public. Something good happens, then something bad happens, and then I take some time off and I travel around the world and I have experiences. One such experience I had after EMusic, which is particularly, you know, a tough time. You know, we went public and then we went down to 53 cents, and that was a bummer, as you might imagine. And then, you know, Zynga's like $3.50 a share. I don't know why anyone would hire me at this point. I worked on 2 IPOs that kind of went. But anyway, after EMusic, I went to Morocco, and I went out into the desert, and I did a stayed with Berber nomads in the middle of the Sahara Desert. And so I'm out there, and I'm on this camel who has a ring in his nose, which basically means a-hole camel. It's like a signal to Camel Valley partners, like, watch out, this camel bites. It was me and a buddy, and we're each on a camel, and then there's this man, Hussein, and his kid, whose name I wish I had gotten, I didn't get. And we go out, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's stars, and it looks like Tatooine from Star Wars, and it's just amazing. And my camel keeps trying to bite me, and I'm like, ah! And we're going over these big sand dunes and everything. And we come up to this one sand dune, and it's no bigger than any other sand dunes, and my buddy's camel goes right up to the top of it, but my camel stops. My camel stops dead in its tracks. And I try and, you know, I'm not like a farm guy, so I kind of gently kind of give it a little camel kick, and again it goes at me and tries to bite me some more, and I'm like, hey, I don't know. And then Hussein, who's walking alongside me, he comes over to me and he's like, and I'm like, so I kind of kick the camel harder, but I can't. I feel like PETA's going to come out and it's going to be bad. And so he gets a stick and he just starts hitting the back of the camel, which really I just like, look, I'll just get up and walk. Like, I don't need he's like, ugh, and he's just hitting this thing, and the camel's just like, ah, and the little boy is tugging at his dad's sleeve, And the dad's like, you know, F off or whatever. And the kid keeps doing these, and the old man is tugging, and the camel's biting his head. And finally, the dad, he walks away, and he's kind of looking up at the sky. And I don't know if he's praying to Allah, cursing Allah. I don't even know if Allah's in the mix if you're Berber, to be honest with you. And he's just had it. The little boy comes over, and he grabs the rope that's holding my camel, and he turns the camel away from the sand dune. And I don't know what's going on, so I look over my shoulder, and the kid gets down on hands and knees, and he starts scurrying up and down the sand dune, back and forth, up and down. Okay, and I'm like, what is this crazy shit? And so he comes back, and he's covered with sand, and he's really sweaty. It's like 100, I mean, it's the middle of the Sahara Desert. And then he takes my camel, and he turns my camel back towards the sand dune. And the camel just goes right up the sand dune, like it's nothing. Like it's nothing. And in that moment, on that trip, believe it or not, that was an experience to me that transformed my life, transformed how I approach business, operations, and working with people. In that moment, I realized that when I run up against a hard obstacle, whether it's a person or whatever the challenge is, that I have to decide, am I going to be the camel, am I going to be the boy, or I'm going to be the man? And always, I strive to be the boy. And when I find myself getting frustrated, it's always because I'm either being stubborn for no good reason like a camel, or I'm being a stupid man who's trying the same crap that I've been trying, that's worked in the past but it's not working now, and I'm trying it over and over again and getting more frustrated. And so what I say to you is, as you go out into your careers, when you feel those frustration points happen, just take a deep breath and say, am I being the camel, the boy, or the man right now? And just try and be the boy. That's it for me.
Thank you very much. So I think we'll do a little bit Q&A, because you've shown one of the most important rules of entrepreneurship, which is to break the rules, which you've done with the timing very well. But that's okay.
I'll also be here I'll be here all day today.
No, but we'll take like 5 minutes Q&A, so that's fine. So who has a question? Yes, over there. Can we get with the mic there?
I can hear you. You can just yell it out.
So, I don't know how much you know already about Romania, but let's say that the stock market is not as free as you have it in US. Is it better without? So what solutions do you think we have in order to raise some funding to fund the product, the idea that we have? Because
I mean, there's never been it's never been easier to start a company than it is now. So your government may have incentives that you may not have researched yet. If yours doesn't, I can tell you the country of Ireland does. I've spent some time over there, and they don't care if you're Irish. Like, if you just want to move there and start a company, bring your business plan. Like, it's incredible what they'll do. They'll match funds up to like $200,000, 200,000 euros. So you just can't let yourself be geographically restrained. If you need to have an office in Dublin to get access to that capital and then have some development happening here, hey, that's a short flight. What I'm saying is, don't let anything stop you. You know, as far as being a publicly traded company, I think HP likes it a lot more than I do. You know, honestly, I mean, working for a public company is not as much fun as working for a private company.
And also about, you mentioned Kickstarter and other angel networks. They have some restrictions as well, because they don't accept people from all over the world. They're really geographically restricted.
For now. I mean, for now, and that's going to change, but I mean, here, if you start networking with the people in this room, if the people in this room who are interested in raising money will all email Vlad, he will get you guys in a working group, he will find you an expert who will come and talk to you about how to raise money from angels. Vlad will do it. Hi, Vlad.
Okay, let's ask another question.
I'm around too, so.
Okay. So, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm interested in more of a technical question. Why the Philippines, and why didn't the HTML5 games didn't work?
Well, it couldn't be because of my games. The games were heartbreaking works of genius. The Philippines are great because there's a great mixture of old machines and new, and the engagement mechanics we had in our games, we found that that audience, that they sent a lot of feeds, and we got an idea of what worked and what didn't.
Okay, Marius?
You're talking about...
You don't need to crouch down like that. We can all see you. You can just run.
You're talking about living the reality as an entrepreneur. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they want to succeed by having the highest position in the company, like being a CEO or whatever. And you're talking about living the reality and take the role that they need. They can actually perform better. Do you see any situation in which, like, because of an investment, CEO can get a different role or occupy a different position in the company because this is an enforcement of getting that investment?
I mean, sometimes that happens. Sometimes that happens. I mean, look, sometimes the same CEO who started the company can be the same CEO that runs it later. That happens. But usually it's because they built a great board who's there to kind of help them and grow them. Look, there's different kinds of leaders. Some leaders preside over a company. Other people run it. And I don't work for CEOs that preside over companies. I work for people who really love what they do, who really love the product, who talk to people that are on the front lines. And I think that founders add great value, but sometimes you just have to be self-aware. And if you're not presiding over the company, and you aren't stupid and have a big ego about it, and you're actually running it, then you should be self-aware enough to say, you know what, maybe I could learn from somebody in a big way right now, or I've got to step back. I mean, look, in my career, in the time that I was at Zynga, I got leveled. I mean, I was the COO of game studio operations. We were going public. I had not been a COO of a publicly traded company before, and they brought in a guy from EA who had 15 years experience, much less hair than me. And they put him in there. And I didn't cry. I was really excited at first. I thought, this guy's going to help me make a lot of money, and he's going to help our company, and I'm going to learn from him.
So basically what you're saying that the young entrepreneur should actually expect to give it away at some point.
No. What I'm saying is the young entrepreneur should make a great board that's going to help them grow, but they should also be self-aware and know their weaknesses. Know your weaknesses. If your weakness is marketing, then focus like crazy on hiring a great marketer. If you're CEO, your job is to grow, find, get great leaders, great employees. That's your job, right? If you can, the least amount of time you can spend dealing with investors, the better. I think that if you want to be the CEO, you can be the CEO, but you will have to know your weaknesses, right? Or you will become the wrong CEO.
And eventually run a sustainable organization.
Eventually
run a sustainable organization.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Look, it's one of these things where working for 5 years on one project has now become an unusual thing. Like 5 years in one company has become less usual. Take a step back. I mean, look, there are stories like HP's or like mine where I've gone and worked on a rocket ship. But this is an unbelievable time in entrepreneurial history. I mean, I met a guy who wrote a scraper, and all it did was it searched for all of the houses in the US that are rent to own. Most houses in the US are not rent to own, they're just rent, or you can buy and own. He created just a list, and he sells access to his list, and he makes $300,000 a year, and he works like 10 hours a month, right? So he could be the CEO of his company forever. I mean, you can create, there are all sorts of businesses that are going to be emerging that leverage technology in new ways. A car wash, a laundromat, these are businesses that millionaires own in the US. Like a millionaire might own 3 car washes. What's going to be the digital equivalent? Like, right? I mean, for those of you who have the skills to code, like, don't be limited. Try stuff. Like, build stuff. Try it. Maybe you don't need to raise money. Okay.
Thank you very much for this inspiring talk.